how to conduct autonomous negotiations through Coupa. So that's the title of today's webinar. And we're doing this webinar today because Pactum AI, the leader in autonomous negotiations, has just been added to the Coupa App Marketplace. And I've got two people here who are experts on this topic. They know more about procurement and autonomous negotiations and Coupa than almost anyone. So Dan Tunnicliffe spent 5 years working at Coupa, and before that, 8 years in procurement at Rolls-Royce, which is a Coupa customer. And both he and also Fabio Herle, who's also here, have spent most of their career working in different procurement and supply chain functions. Well, Fabio is very experienced in procurement software and was actually one of Pactum's very earliest employees nearly 4 years ago. So Dan and Fabio are both from Pactum. And we got both sides here because Dan is the solutions consultant and Fabio is in delivery and operations, and both helping bring the benefits of autonomous negotiations to the world. And so all of you watching this webinar live are invited to ask questions, and I'll come back at the end and take some of those questions. The whole webinar will be recorded, and we'll upload that afterwards. You don't need to take screenshots or anything. We'll make sure you can see the whole thing. Perfect. And maybe, Dan, I can start by asking you, because you were in Coupa for such a long time, how does it feel to now be on the other side and integrate technology into Coupa?
It's great. I genuinely loved. I was as you said, 5 years at Coupa. Genuinely loved every minute of it. Great place to be. Loved working with the team there. So getting back to work with some old colleagues and friends has been great fun. But also really enjoyed seeing customers from a different angle. When you're at Coupa, you're in the depths of Coupa. So seeing how customers are benefiting from Coupa and then extending it with other solutions like ourselves is great to see. Similarly, being outside, you sort of realize how broad the kind of procurement and how much the procurement technology space is flourishing, which is great to see. There's a lot of other solutions out there that we connect to and we work with and existed otherwise. That it's great to see how much this space is coming along and how quickly it is enhancing. And yeah, excited to talk to some old acquaintances, I guess, in this webinar and otherwise.
Perfect. Well, Dan, Fabio, take it away. How to conduct autonomous negotiations through Coupa.
Thank you, Adam. So I guess the place to start actually is with explaining a little bit about what Pactum is doing for those that aren't fully aware. And so everything we do at Pactum is around negotiation. Negotiations themselves are hard. They're hard to prepare for, they're hard to conduct. But at the same time, we know as procurement professionals that have been doing it for forever that negotiations create value. So the more negotiations you can do, by nature, the more value you can create. And so what we're trying to do with Pactum is to help organizations to conduct more negotiations. And that's effectively wherever negotiations happen. So we're going to talk today, obviously, about the first step with Coupa, but negotiations happen in lots of different places, whether that be for one-off requests, for contracts, for after sourcing events, for one-off campaigns of differing sorts. And there's lots of places that negotiations happen that organizations struggle to take advantage of. And so what we're looking to do at Pactum is to enable that through what we call an autonomous agent, which I'll show you shortly, that interacts directly with suppliers and negotiates on all different kinds of terms. Now, I mentioned a few of those different scenarios of which we negotiate, and there are quite a few. And this is how we visualize that through what we call our use case library. But Fabio, one of the things one of the things that surprised me when I joined Pactum that you helped me understand more was how many places in the procurement process that negotiations happen. I'd always kind of conceptually thought a negotiation was a thing that happened as part of a source to pay process. But when actually you think about it, there's lots of scenarios. And you did a great job of helping me to understand that. I don't know if it's something you can share some of that knowledge with the team about where Pactum can negotiate.
Yeah, sure. So as Dan said, there's a lot of different, let's say, triggers that can be the reason to have to conduct a negotiation with a supplier. And I'm going to focus today, because it's specifically related to Coupa, I'm going to focus on the bucket that is above procurement, that blue bucket on the left. This is what we're going to focus on today. And I'm going to go from left to right, actually from right to left. I'm going to start with contracts. I think this is something very straightforward for everybody. You have a contract renewal which is coming up, or you have a new contract with a new supplier that you would like to sign. There are some examples which are listed there. Direct or indirect procurement can be price lists, can be including volume for specific items, Incoterms, payment terms, and so on and so on. So that is one, how to say, one general use case which Pactum is offering to be negotiated. This is on the roadmap to be integrated with Coupa, but is not available yet on the marketplace. It's a bit further down the road. Directly to the left of that, above sourcing events, we have post-bid. And this is already today implemented with a number of customers with an integration which are using Coupa. So what is that? Let's look a little bit more concretely on it. It's basically suppliers have handed in their bids. They have offered quotations to the procurement organization, and now you would like that to be negotiated one by one individually with these suppliers, because you don't have the resources, the time to do that yourself. Yeah, so very simple process. I think important here to mention is one, how to say, differentiation, that Pactum is really focusing and offering the negotiation process. Yes. So you could say, in a way, the moment when I go into the room, I open the door, I sit down at the table across from another party, and then we start talking until we finish the conversation, and then we have managed to agree to a deal. This is what Pactum is doing. So we are not an RFQ tool, for example. We are not getting quotations from suppliers. Coupa is offering that itself as a functionality. There are also other large and small solution providers, for example, that are offering this. So Pactum is specifically focusing on the step of negotiating with suppliers. Yeah, and then we have the last bucket to the left of that, called requests. This is what we will focus on today specifically, and Dan will, in a few seconds, he will go into the, let's say, into the real thing, show you, to give you the look and feel, how it looks like, how it works, how the process is set up. And again, it's very straightforward. On the one hand, spot buys, as an example, somebody somewhere, a user within Coupa has a demand, has a need for something, creates a request in Coupa, and procurement doesn't have the time to deal with that request specifically. Pactum can pick up the data, negotiate, reach out to the supplier, have a discussion with him, try to improve the terms, and then come back with the results automatically into Coupa. Tactical sourcing is a small differentiation of this. It's when, let's say, the user also knows additional suppliers. As an example, he would like to add to the competition to make this, let's say, more, how to say, put a bit more pressure on the suppliers to compete with each other, doing individual negotiations parallel with more than one supplier. Yeah. That's it. I think very straightforward. And then let's hand it over back to Dan, and let's look how it really works. Yeah, in detail.
Thanks, Fabio. So yeah, just to dive then into exactly what we're here for today, which is the App Marketplace connector that we've recently gone live with Coupa. As Fabio's mentioned, it's focused on requests, and specifically today we're going to look at the single supplier spot buys. Now, how that looks from a process overview before we actually show kind of Coupa and Pactum side by side working together is like this. So effectively what we're doing is we're taking requests, and then we're using the data or the information within that request and Coupa's very configurable approval chains to define where Pactum can come in. So for example, we'd be looking at requests that aren't on catalog, they're not pre-negotiated or don't have a contract linked to them, let's say in Coupa terms. They're in a certain variation of categories or commodities within certain value thresholds, but effectively looking for the kind of area where for you it makes sense to reach out and negotiate, because otherwise these requests would just become orders on kind of list price, if you will. So what happens is we use Coupa's approval chains to automatically identify something as being applicable for Pactum. Pactum then reaches into Coupa, grabs the details of the request, the supplier, the email address of the supplier, the line items, any attachments if there are any, and immediately reaches out to the supplier on email to say, we've got a requirement, a quote, a request, depending on the context of the information we've got, that we'd like to discuss with you. Please click on this link. They click on the link, they're taken into a portal. I'll show you all of that in a moment. On conclusion of that negotiation, the information is passed, or the outcome is passed back to Coupa, the line items updated, any additional quotes reattached, and the comment added to give context to what's happened. and then the request sort of passed along the approval chains and completed through purchase order as it does today. It's an entirely touchless process for the teams, for humans. So no change in process for the end user, no additional requirement for procurement teams to get hands-on. And we time bind everything to commonly around 3 days, sort of normally limited at 2 to 5, but commonly around 3. So there's no significant impact on the end-to-end process cycle time either, which I know is important. So with that hopefully understood, let me show you how it looks. And we're actually going to start this, which I've not done for a little while, in Coupa. So I've got a request here already created of 4 line items of MRO in this instance with this supplier MKM Merchants. It's free text requests that I've just created myself. And I've gone to submit that request through Coupa, and you can see automatically Pactum has been pulled in as what's called in Coupa a remote approver to the approval chain here. So the user's not had to do anything. Pactum's just automatically been pulled into the chain. What's happened in the background then is, because this has been submitted now, Pactum has reached in, it's grabbed the details of this request, these 4 line items, the supplier, it's grabbed the details of the supplier, their email address, which we can pull from the primary contact or the PO email, lots of different places we can get that from within Coupa, and reached out to the supplier on email, said, we've got something we'd like to discuss with you, this particular requirement. To do so, please click on this link. Then Pactum will come back. It will update the line item pricing for each of the relevant line items, the payment terms, add a comment to tell you exactly what's been updated, and approve the request and pass it on to the final requester without anyone needing to do anything. Obviously, the end user will get a notification because Pactum has placed a comment in the request, so they get made aware that they've now got a better price and a better deal, thanks to the efforts of the tools of the procurement team. But effectively, it's entirely touchless. Back in Pactum, what you will see is every single negotiation that gets pulled over from Coupa is tracked individually. You can go into any of the individual negotiations. You can see what were the original quoted prices, for example, what's then the agreed unit price, what's the total saving benefit, how's that split across price and payment term improvements, as was the case in this one. All of the relevant details of the particular negotiation, as well as the entire transcript. So the whole conversational flow you've just seen is stored and accessible through one click. So you can go and actually look at the full transcript to see that of interest. And all of that is then summarized back up to a management dashboard as well. So that's the sort of process we've just seen. As I say, Pactum within 3 days, entirely touchlessly delivering you value. And as you can imagine, by plugging this into Coupa, you can enable the business to do a hell of a lot more, knowing that you strategically have some additional handle on it. That's how it works. That's what it looks like. Fabio, I think one of the other important things about being on the marketplace is how easy it is to help customers then get live with Pactum and Coupa. So I think you're probably best placed to touch on that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Let's move to the next slide. Perfect. So basically, let's say one way forward is somebody is new to Pactum, has never used it before. It has not been set up. That we can see the deployment time is a little bit longer. This goes back that we need some additional time to align with the customer regarding the branding, the colors, the logos, so suppliers feel at home when they interact with the tool, like they're talking with their customer, so to speak. Configuration that has to be set up, and on top of that, the integration into Coupa. When we're talking about a customer which is already using Pactum today, then the integration can be set up very quickly, and I think the main message here is the workload that is being done is on the Pactum side, because our integration team is setting up then the connector for the customer, basically needing the access. The customer needs to configure the workflow, and then we set up the integration, make it ready. The customer can do some end-to-end testing, and then when it's ready, we move from the sandbox over to production. Yeah. Maybe one final comment. It's also autonomous negotiations are also a digital solution, like anyone else. So when implementing it, it's not different in a sense that regarding communication and change management, it's the same as when implementing other solutions in the procurement space. So I'm not going to go into the details there. Yeah, I think that's it. Back to you, Adam.
I think just one thing I'd add there as well, given the notifications we've got about release 40, Fabio, is the fact being on the app marketplace makes sure that the team do a good job of making sure that we stay entirely up to date with the Coupa releases as well. So we're constantly retesting and reassuring this as part of the different Coupa releases, which I think is as an ex-Coupa employee and as with Coupa customers on the line will know is important to stay on top of, because they come thick and fast.
Yeah, that's right. Good point. Yeah.
So I don't know if we had any questions or anything, Adam.
So thank you so much. So one question we get quite a lot, so I can see questions starting to come through now. So yeah, anyone else wants to add theirs, I can read them out. I can see one question we get quite a lot is what languages does autonomous negotiations work in? And maybe if I can add a follow-up, which is kind of what regions does Pactum operate in as well?
I can take it from the upside. So right now it's being used and all. So in the Americas, North and South, in the EMEA region, Europe, via Middle East to Africa, as well then over in APAC, in Australia, and as well as in Asia. So across the globe. Sometimes we have, for example, customers in South Korea as well as in Japan. But then at the same time, we also have customers that are located in other places on the world, but the negotiation goes out to a supplier which is located in one of these countries, as an example. Then regarding the languages, obviously English is available, but then I mentioned, for example, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, German.
I think at last count, I think we were live in 12 languages, Fabio, but I think the other point to add, Adam, is for customers. Yeah,
exactly.
For other customers, if they have additional languages, it's not a huge challenge or effort for us. So we're more than happy to take on new languages if customers have large supplier bases in those areas.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Perfect. And a question from Redouan. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name properly. Is the concept of Pactum's autonomous negotiations replacing conventional RFX auctions, considering the process of requisition straight to negotiations?
So no, it's not replacing those processes. It's autonomizing, if I can use that word, the way that negotiations could have been done in the past. So RFXs still exist. If I actually jump back a few slides, we have a whole work solution linked to the RFX process. So the post bid solution here is linked to the RFX. We're not replacing that in any way. That basically builds on the back of it, where a negotiation could happen afterwards. But similarly, we create opportunity where it previously existed but was unable to be taken advantage of. So often here we're looking in this scenario, we're talking about at requests that could have been negotiated in the past, but you weren't able to because of capacity. So let's say something less than £100,000 that's off contract within an MRO space. People may not have had the opportunity, so would have just taken list price for something that they may have been able to achieve a discount for. We're just enabling and unlocking that possibility and are helping procurement teams reach more broadly than they have done in the past. Similarly, on the contract space, like I say, lots of negotiations happen there. We're helping you or helping category managers in that instance more commonly to focus on the most pressing or the most strategic negotiations, and to be able to hand off. Let's say you've coming up to the end of the end of the year this year, you've got 20 negotiations you need to run. If you could hand off 15 of those to Pactum and focus your attention on 5, you know that you're going to get the maximum out of those 5 most strategic ones, and Pactum to do something to be able to enable more elsewhere. So we're not replacing or seeking to replace anything. We're just autonomizing something that was either done as humans before or humans weren't able to do and effectively miss an opportunity.
Perfect. And you can also ask your questions anonymously, of course, so that's perfectly fine. And we got some anonymous questions coming in. How do you avoid suppliers artificially inflating their pricing once they get accustomed to autonomous negotiations? So I guess, yeah, can they kind of figure out the rules? And yeah.
It's a great question, and one we are constantly working on kind of making sure isn't something that hits us. So we will work with customers both ahead of going live and once we're live to make sure that if there are suppliers that we're going to get lots of times, that we manage them appropriately. There's lots of different ways we can manage them, looking to bring in tactical sourcing, for example, looking to actually switch them from lots of spot buys to a broader contract-based negotiation. Limit the amount of times that they get it, so they only get it for the most important requests where we think there's the most opportunity, but also have variability in the flow and in the conversation. So it's not a repeat negotiation every time where they figure out we can do the same things. Make sure negotiations are different and the suppliers know that we've seen them before, so that don't artificially inflate or try and kind of game the system in any way. So we put a lot of focus and effort into multiple different methods to try and tackle that, and depending on the exacting scenario, depends on how that's approached. And as I say, one of the main things is bringing competition in as a in a kind of entirely touchless way to help.
And with an individual supplier, just to add, so as a general statement, there's quite a number of tactics depending on the scenario. That basically what Danny said, to summarize it, that help and ensure that the supplier cannot game the system, basically. So anti-gamification measurements, yeah, which we are using.
And another question. In the example given, how does Pactum handle the hierarchy of payment terms in Coupa? PO payment terms are always reset to the contract terms.
So the standard method is that the purchase order takes its payment terms from the request. The request will pull it from a contract. If there's a contract in place, it's not going to come to Pactum. So we're getting into the depths of Coupa now. But if whatever is on the request, even if a user doesn't have access to change it, if the API does, that will read across to the purchase order, which then reads across to the invoice. So that's the kind of the method, as you say. The contract is taken as the primary when a request is linked to a contract. In our scenario, most commonly, we aren't working with requests linked to contracts because the nature of the contract is it's been pre-negotiated. So we wouldn't often be picking those up. But if there is a scenario that's the case, the request being overwritten at the point we're doing it would still overwrite the initial request creation. Whoever asked that question, very detailed. I like it. Love delving back into Coupa and yeah, let's set up a call, and you're thinking about this quite deeply. So love to get into more conversations about it.
Yeah, and another interesting question is, so will there be, for the other use cases, will there be apps in Coupa for those as well?
Yeah, I can take it. So the next one around the corner is, you're actually showing the slide. You see, we have requests. The next one is which I mentioned is post-bid. This one is already live with a number of customers with an integration, so it's in that sense battle proven. And now we're in the process of going through that approval and check process with Coupa to get it into the marketplace. So it's 1, 2, 3 months. It's going to be in there, and then the one after that is going to be contracts, which we're working on. Yeah, to also at a second stage, then get it also into the app marketplace. And then, and then there's a high probability then that more will follow.
I think what's probably worth adding as well, Fabio, is we're having the privilege of getting to work with some of Coupa's product team and some senior people within the product team to actually refine these and make sure that they're singing, and also where appropriate, ask things of the Coupa team who are amenable to listening as well to things that we think would enhance the interconnectivity, which to come back to your very first question, Madam, is one of the fun parts of this for me, for sure.
So maybe to add, the goal is that for all of these, what is already here, and Dan showed, but also the applications which are coming, is that it is as best as possible a seamless experience for the Coupa user, so that he can really stay within Coupa. give the inputs within Coupa, and then Pactum really can take it and do the negotiation with the suppliers without the user having to jump over to Coupa and do additional stuff there. Yeah, and that's what we're working together, like Dan pointed out, together also with the Coupa product team. Yeah.
And where would you recommend Pactum is pulled in to negotiate? I think, is this about kind of which types of contracts to negotiate?
So there's a little bit of there's some general places. So as I say, the threshold from low value threshold of around kind of $1,000 to maybe $5,000, pounds-ish, up to wherever the kind of point at which your organization strategically wants to step in is kind of a good value range. From a category perspective, there's a number of categories across both goods and services that do work quite well. There are some that aren't. We're more than happy to work with customers to kind of go into your data set and understand exactly where we've seen success with categories, and then where actually, yeah, your distribution of suppliers, for example, makes sense. Easy examples, MRO is obviously the one I showed, is a great example. Things like services, so lower cost services, consultancy, statements of work, those sorts of things. IT peripherals, IT services, engineering services, those sorts of things work quite nicely from experience. As I say, for lots of customers, there's kind of the general stuff, and then there'll be other things that your data suggests. But we're more than happy to work with you. If that was what the question meant. If you meant where in the actual workflow, that's a conversation, that's a debate every time. Commonly first, but sometimes last. Yeah, but we'll work with that with you if we get into more detail.
Brilliant. And we've answered all the questions. And I can see most people actually stayed with us to the end. We had a good attendance. So thank you to everyone who joined us. And thank you to Dan and Fabio.
Thank you, Adam, for setting up, and everyone for joining.
Thank you. Goodbye.